Welcome to BCT 106, Soldering and Brazing. Today we're going to be discussing a realm of different things. We're going to take you from the very basic tools and instruments that you're going to use all the way through and up to brazing using nitrogen to clear the lines and everything else for your system. Now remember, a lot of this is for HVAC students, but plumbing as well can learn a great deal. In the plumbing course though, you will not use the nitrogen unless it's something that you're trying to ensure that nothing gets contaminated in your system. It's extremely important to use nitrogen when we're talking about the AC component. Well, here's the tools that you're going to be signing out. All right, now we'll start over here. These are propane and this MAP gas. Propane is normally blue, it could be red, and then yellow is typically your MAP gas. You should have a roll of solder in there, and this is 95.5, and then of course the head for that. Now that's a turbo torch head, which is self-igniting, and we'll show you this later. You will not, more than likely will not see the rolls of coil. Instead, you will be now asking for 18-inch pieces pre-cut for you, so that in the future you just ask myself or some of the people around, and we'll get you the copper that you need. Also, at any time, you can always use the scrap. Now remember, very few people ever do this right the first time. The biggest problem that we run into is students getting frustrated. This is a learning experience. You're not going to become an expert when you leave here finishing this course. You're going to know it very well because you have to attain objectives. But it's going to take you many years to get used to it. So you're going to be dealing with 1/2 inch and 3/8 inch copper. Then we have our swedging kit, swedging and flaring kit. We'll go into more of that in the short run here. Your cutting tool, which also has your little piece here for reaming, okay? And they come in all different sizes and shapes, all right? Your tape measure, your locking pliers. Just check to be sure that you have the right brushes, and like this one's pretty wore down, but we're going to use it today, but they should be in pretty good shape. What that is people trying to shove a 3/8 into a 1/4 inch opening or something, and it ruins the equipment. Your chisel, pens, and then your spring benders and some sandpaper. Now the toolbox and the swedge kit you will sign out from the folks up at the front area with your PEMA ID card, so you need to have that. Now, one thing that you got to be aware of is safety at all times. Oh, wait a minute, safety. Safety 1. These chairs can't be here. The reason being is there's not enough room for students to sit there and collectively work here, and students behind us and in front of us. So therefore, for safety reasons, stand. If you can't stand, need to talk to us, all right? Because you might have a problem in that in the field. The other thing about safety is work gloves and glasses. Now, if you have the side shields for your glasses and their safety, that's great. Just let us know, all right? Now, on to bigger and better things. When we talk about the safety here, that has to be number 1. There is no other options. If you notice the area when you come in here, we have the gases, we have cramped space, but you have to be paying attention to what you're doing at all times. Do not go and start daydreaming, because that's when the accidents start to happen. We've never had one here in 18 years, and I don't plan on having one now, especially since I'm getting close to retirement. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to basically put all this away, and then we're going to start off on how you're going to get your materials and what you're going to do with them. Now, table's clear. Again, workspace is the ultimate, all right? Be careful out here. Now, you will not, hopefully you should not get a roll, all right? But if and when you do get a roll, and this same process you're going to do later on down in the course, because you're going to reuse some copper. And because it's soft rolled copper, you can do this. So, if you got a roll and you want to get it straight, just lay your hand down where it begins and roll it out. Now, for simplicity, I'm just rolling out about 2 foot here. All right. Now, remember I told you you're going to get it in 16 or 18-inch lengths? All right. So let's just go over a brief synopsis of what's going to happen here. Here is your 18 inches. Just mark it off. And again, you're going to get this already pre-cut. But the same process that you're going to take this 18-inch and cut it into 2-inch pieces is the same. All right. Now, you're going to put this, you see that there's 4 rollers in here. All right. And the cutting wheel. You want to kind of guide that right down in there on the center. And don't use a lot of pressure. You know, I don't know what it is, but people always want to see how tight they can get this. Now, you notice that I just snugged it up there. The reason being is the more pressure I put on this, the more work I got to do later on. So, therefore, I put a little tension on it and I rotate it 2 360-degree turns. You notice that I'm not, when I tighten it and twist it, I'm barely moving anything here. All right. Every time I tighten it, I do complete 360 degrees 2 times. And I just keep going along. And don't be in a rush. There, okay? Now, let's look inside here, because you're going to see where it cut is going to leave a little ream right there, a little edge, really fine, all right? Now, that's what you want to get rid of. The reason I say that is because if you do not get rid of it, it's going to show up in your work later on. So, put your gloves on. And this is where you're going to start getting involved. Remember, these are not going to be clean. They're going to be cut off in about 18-inch pieces. All right. Nothing around here is right to the point. All right. But what you're going to do is you're going to lay yours out, and then you're going to start marking it off in 2-inch increments, because that's the size you're going to get it. All right. So, all right, and so forth. I mean, redundancy we don't need to worry about. All right. Now you're going to take the cutting tool, open it back up, and cut 9 pieces out of here. All right. Mine are 1/2 inch for training purposes. You're going to do both 3/4 or 3/8 and 1/2 inch. All right. Now remember, I told you that you left a little ream or a little piece of copper in there. All right, edge. That's because of several things. One, Typically, it's because the cutting wheel is dull. So you always want to check that. And normally I keep track of that. About every 2 weeks I just replace the things. But sometimes students break stuff and don't tell me about it. So once that's done and I've cut it, now I have to ream it. Now, on the reaming process, and there's different types of reamers, so don't get locked into just one type. But you notice that I want to keep my pipe tilted because I want whatever scraps or material coming out to fall out, not back into my tube. So therefore, always point it down. Now, you notice how I have that right on the edge. And I apply a little bit of pressure. And rotate it 360-degree circle. Now, if you notice, you see the shiny piece where I've removed that? You see that? It used to stick. Now it's just a straight shot. And you just want to rotate it to check it to be sure that it's all good to go. The reason being, and you won't, unfortunately, you will not know if you've done it correctly until one of two things. You've got enough experience under your belt, or when you go to swedge and flare this, we'll show you that if you do it wrong, and I'm going to have a couple pieces here that not going to pass, you'll have a fold over. And all that is the copper that you didn't ream out came over, and you're not going to have a tight joint. All right? So that's why it's important. Now, it's also important not to get carried away and make this thing razor sharp. All you're trying to do is remove that little fine piece of copper. All right? And again, keep your tools sharp, in working order, and you'll never have to worry as much about it. You'll know when your stuff is getting dull because you're going to be reaming more and more of that copper out. All right? So again, the reaming tool, just set it off to the side. And the other thing is I want to bring to your attention is that when you're working in the classroom here, there may be up to 4 people working here. Your tools are yours, not Johnny's. Because what happens is you start to clean up and you pick up Johnny's tools and throw them in your box, and then Johnny doesn't have the right tools. All right? And it just slows the process down. We're here to teach you and make this thing go as smooth as possible. But to do that, it's up to the individual students to take care of the equipment. All right, so we've cut it, cut our 9 pieces, and you've reamed both ends. All right? So, by the time you get done, you should have 9 pieces. Both ends are completely reamed. All right? You'll take those 9 pieces and you'll show them to an instructor. Now, my suggestion is do one, do it correctly, then have somebody in this room check it out for you. All right? Do not go through all 9 of them and then find out you've done them wrong. All right? You're just wasting copper and your time. All right? If you have questions, you always ask. All right? But there's asking questions because you might do something wrong, and there's asking questions because you didn't pay attention. All right? So, and we can tell the difference. So please concentrate on what's being asked of you here so that when you come out into the lab, you can get it done, and it's your time. All right? So we're trying to show you the best way of doing this. All right, so now, since we have the lines or the copper cut, again, just ask. These 9, hopefully, will be all you need. There will be some circumstances where you're going to need to get stuff out of the scrap bin. All right, cut some scrap material if you screw up a piece of copper and you're still not getting it, try the scraps. But then there's also something I want to tell you. Frustration does not work well in this kind of environment. For most of you, it's going to be new. And for some of you that have been in the field, you're going to say, oh, I already know how to do this, and that's great. But we have a standard that you have to meet. You have to meet that standard before you move on. I don't care if you've got 0 experience or 20 years of experience. If you can't meet the standard, you don't move on, period. All right, enough said on that. We're moving on to the next phase, which is the flaring. All right, so now we're back to the situation of we're going to start flaring. And remember I told you that you have the flare kit, and these run about $100. And I'm guaranteeing you, you're going to need one of these eventually. All right, so as I tell all the students, as you're going through these programs, I highly suggest that you start buying your equipment piece by piece. Always ask us, preferably ask me, because I work with most of this stuff, and I will give you a straight up honest opinion of the quality of this stuff. We use Yellow Jacket, okay? I've used other equipment. Lennox is a great quality piece of equipment. It costs more, but I'm going to tell you, we have 800 students run through this every year, and this equipment's still holding up. I only have to replace this stuff maybe every 3 years. And that's a lot of wear and tear. All right, so remember, I have 1/2 inch material. You're going to have 3/8 first, and then you're going to do the 1/2 inch. In your box, and again, you're going to sign this out with your ID card, it should have everything that's right there for you. All right. The cone shape is making for flares only. Flares. That's all this does. Every one of these other ones, all right, will make what is known as a swedge. All right. So we're worried about this cone shape. That's making our flare. You'll feel that it has a light coat of oil on it. Just be sure that you keep that oil on there, but very light, thin coat. All right. The next thing is your yoke. Now, what normally goes wrong with this yoke is right here. What normally goes wrong with this yoke is right here. It wears out because students are putting way too much pressure on it. What we've done is we put a ball bearing in there and kind of tweaked it a little bit, and it lasts forever because this is a high steel ball bearing, just because so many students use this. But in your case, when you buy yours, it will not have that, but again, you're not going to use it as many times as we do. The other thing that you see is this little C-clip, okay? That gets tendency of getting damaged and bent and broken, and then the whole head comes off. We don't have that problem now since we've modified this, but again, it's due to over-extensive wear, and so we resolve that through our machine shop folks. All right, so everybody's working together as a team around here to help make the process as easy as possible for you and save money so that tuition doesn't go up. All right, now you'll see that there's several different bars here. This is the bar that if you're using 1/2 inch, you need to use it. This is the bar that you want to use if you're using 1/2 inch. The reason being is the 1/2 inch is dead center, and you'll see where your yoke clips into this here in a second. All right. If you're using 3/8, you can use the other leg here. All right. So what I want to do is I want to take my cone shape head and just put it on to my yoke handle. All right. And you don't have to crank on this. Just firm it up. All right. Then if it's in this position, you notice that it's all the way pushed in. Just work it out. Bring it all the way back to clear the yoke opening there. All right, so something to that effect. Set that down off the side. Now, loosen up the wing nuts on this thing, all right, so that you have a good working area. Now you'll notice that in here you'll see copper. Now that's because the person that used it before just got done with it and got rid of it. All right, not good. So just take your wire brush, move it back and forth, try to get all that out of there, because what happens is it will prevent you from getting a good grip. Now normally I'll go through this 2 or 3 times this semester and ream them all out with a power tool. All right, but still, it's you that's doing the work, so check your equipment. Now, remember, you ream this. Well, on this 1/2 inch one, I did not ream it, because remember I explained to you what happens if you don't ream it? Well, I'm going to show you right now. So, remember that we want to do a flare. And a flare, as you see in your book, only wants to, that flare is only going to cover this little opening down here, that flat portion, all right, very little. Well, common sense tells me if I have it this far out, that isn't going to work. So therefore, I need to bring it so that it's just about, I don't know what that is, maybe an 1/16, an 1/8 of an inch above it, but I would say more or less like a 1/16, maybe 1/32. All right. Now, this is where it becomes important. Whoops. So, this is where it becomes important, all right, is hold on to this, and you're going to tighten the back nut first, all right? Do not, and I emphasize this, do not use pliers to tighten this, or the vise, put it in the vise and twist it. No, you'll be buying this puppy. But keep your 1/16 of an inch, 1/32. You're going to have to experience this. Now, the other leg, you're going to slip it over so that that washer and the nut, the wing nut, is just like I'm showing you right here. All right. Now firm it up. Check the length. All right. Sticking out here. You don't want much. And then firmly tighten this up with your hand until it doesn't go any further. That's the proper way to do it. If you tighten this up first and then come back here, you're going to notice that your copper is going to start slipping. All right? So there is a key to this, and just if you want to make it proper, work with it. Now, you notice that it has these 45-degree angle slots in it. All right, that goes over the unit and locks into place. Now you notice that the cone is just over the center of my piece of copper tubing. Well, I'm going to rotate this, and you notice that just like anything else that's designed in such a manner to fit into something, it will center itself. It will self-center it. All right. Here is where putting a light coat of oil on that cone shape is going to come into play. Now, what I need to do is I'll turn it about 360 degrees, loosen it up, tighten it back down, 360 degrees. back it off. What you're trying to do is prevent it from getting hot and putting a lot of pressure on this thing. All right, firm it up again and tighten it. Now, when it bottoms out, do not try to shove it through the other end. All right, firm it up, cease. That's all you want to do. When it bottoms out, don't try to push it any farther. Then walk it out. Disassemble it. Now, here we are looking at our flare. Now, do you notice, you see that little piece of copper that I was telling you earlier, if you didn't ream out, what would happen? Well, that little piece right there, when you go take and put this on an AC unit or plumbing, and you try to attach it to the fitting, that little piece of copper is going to stop it from getting a seal tight. And every time you're going to end up wondering why it's leaking. May it be with refrigerant, oil, water, whatever. All right? So that's why it's important to use your reamer and get a clean cut on it. All right? That's what you don't want to happen. The process is the same, except that you're doing a ream prior to it to ensure that it's a smooth and clean flare on this. Again, when you go to take it apart the same way you put it back, just opposite direction. All right. Here's where it becomes to see if your flare is properly done. Now, other than we know that this will not make it pass, so you failed on that portion if that happens. All right. But now we want to see if it fits into our test subject. All right. So we have nuts that are hanging from chains on our welding table. We're going to insert this and see if it meets the criteria. Okay, so here's our chain, our tube. All right, and just push it down, and you're going to see, look, I don't have a lot of room on that. All right, and you see how it fits into the bottom? If my reaming was done correctly and my swedge was done correctly, or excuse me, my flare, then this is going to hold very tight in my equipment, and I'm going to have the proper seal. All right, so this is what you're looking for. If you raised it up out of that holding bar too far, you know, let's say 1/8 of an inch, then it may not fit through these walls. Well, then you got to do it again. If you didn't leave enough out, then there's not enough material to grab at the base of that flare. If you notice down in that hole, it's angled. Well, that angle matches that flare that you just made. Okay, and that's why it's going to be sealed tight when you screw in that male adapter here. All right, male fitting. All right, so again, that's why it's important to have a clean ream, not remove too much, not leave too much excess. All right, and then once you learn how to space it, it becomes much easier. The process will. All right. So, real quick, the process, you've cut your pieces. You come through, hold it, face it up and down, ream it. And you notice how it's all one smooth motion. All right. I check it. See, nothing. If you have a pencil, it works even better. All right. But nothing's gripping. I look at it, I have, for all intents and purposes, the thickness of the copper has not changed. You'll see some people that this thing looks like a razor knife because they go in there and they just ream it so far. Well, that isn't going to help either, because when you go to flare it, it's going to spread and crack. Worthless. All right. So once you have that, now you can move on to getting your yoke set up and your base plate. All right, your clamp. Set it in there. Big thing. A lot of people not paying attention. Notice that on your clamp, there is the flare side, and then next to it there's one that doesn't have any flare, but on the other side it does. So do not do a flare when it doesn't have the beveled edge, otherwise it'll never come out. Okay, so knowing that, now you're going to take that piece and show it to an instructor. They're going to evaluate it and either say you're a go or no go. If you're a no go, then you're going to take another piece, redo it, show them when you're finished reaming it, and then show it to them when it's set up in the vise, so that we can ensure that you're not having a problem setting it up. All right? Experience tells us that most of this is done because people are in a haste. They just want to get it through and they think they know it. Well, they'll come back and bite you every time. Each one of these are going to be flared. The objective is, by the time you get down to this point, you should have 4 or 5 of these that are in excellent condition. All right? The reason being, and you're going to remember, you're doing this for 1/2 inch and 3/8. Always start off with the smaller ones. All right? Learn, make mistakes, but each time you use a different type of copper, you're going to have to adjust your height, your pressure, your reaming. It's just it's like artistry at its best. You can't put too much paint on there, it looks globby. You don't put enough, you see the canvas. Well, the same process. All right? Once you get those 9 done, both in 3/8 and 1/2 inch, you should be able to move on to the next exercise. Sometimes you may not be able to. Then start digging in the trash and finding scraps and continue working until you meet that requirement. All right? The reason I say that you're going to do all 9 of these in both 1/2 inch and 3/8 on one side is because in the next exercise you're going to use the other side for swedging. I hope that I made it perfectly clear on how to go about doing this. Remember, when you bring back the equipment, bring it back as if you wanted to use it the next time. All right? Don't leave stuff all attached, dirty. Now, you know what? I've been doing this long enough that I can tell you that stuff is going to break. There's a difference between breaking and abusing. If something breaks, you just let me know. I have spare parts, I'll fix it. We got machine tool, we got everybody here. If you're starting to abuse it, I'll be able to tell that also. All right? I don't take lightly the abuse. It costs a lot of money, and you guys are paying a lot of bucks to get a training, and we want that to happen. But I can't do it if people are damaging the equipment. So what I'm asking is, keep an eye on your other partners. If they're doing something wrong, you can correct them or bring it to my attention or one of the instructors, and we'll get them corrected. Because we can't keep our eyes on everybody at all times. So knowing that, Now we are done with the flaring aspect of this exercise.